Are you coaching or are you coaxing? Let's spend the next few minutes looking at some of the 5 sins that show up in our questions, right? So we were just having a little exercise there where I asked you to figure out why I didn't want to go to my mother-in-law's on Sunday night, right? And I asked you to only use closed questions. So let me ask you now, what was that experience like for you when I asked you to find out why I didn't want to go on Sunday night?
It was very limiting.
It was very limiting. What was limiting about it?
I couldn't get any depth of information.
Yeah, so there's no depth, nothing going on there. What else did you notice? Yes?
It took a lot of effort on my part.
Yeah, it was a lot of effort on your part. What kind of effort did you need?
What kind of effort did I want?
Yes, yeah.
I wanted it not to be any effort.
Yeah, so you didn't want to have to work as hard as you ended up working. Right, okay, over here.
It left me no choice, whether yes or no.
Yes, I didn't give you a choice at all. It could only be your yes or no question I was asking you. What did you notice about yourself?
Well,
yes.
What I saw, all those things ended up in a frustration. It's like, I'm having to work too hard, so I guess I'll just stop.
Right, so you found yourself frustrated because you had to work too hard, so eventually you just stopped, right? So, folks, all of the experience that you just had is exactly what happens when we look at our first sin of a bad question, which is the closed question. And ironically, this is something that we do a lot more often than any of us realize. I bet if I went around with a cassette recorder for a couple of weeks and recorded your conversations, you would be amazed at how you ask more closed questions than open questions. As I know when I poll people and say, well, what do you think? You consciously want to be pulling ideas from information. What do you think? Do you ask more closed questions or open questions? And people always say, oh, Cheryl, I'm very good at asking open questions. And yet, when we listen closer, we find that this is probably our #1 sin. And the other interesting thing about closed questions is that you need to come up with the question to ask me. And I think that's part of the frustration that you were feeling there, because what happens for me as well as for you, you've got to be doing the work. I'm not working so hard, but your biases are starting to show up. How dare you think I don't like my mother-in-law? How dare you think she's not a good cook? Those are the kind of questions that you are asking me. So if your job is to pull wisdom, ideas, to brainstorm with your team, then closed questions aren't going to create the kind of environment where we're going to promote discovery of new ideas. Flip your closed questions this way. Put a what or a how. They're probably our best friends, what or hows. And just put the work back here. You made it very easy for me. I only had to say yes or no. So put the work back here where it belongs. So tip, when you catch yourself with the closed questions, flip it and put it back here. Imagine you've got a beach ball in your hand and you're just wanting to throw that beach ball over here. Because remember, what you're wanting to do is promote discovery of new ideas. Now, I don't want you to hear that closed questions don't belong in our conversations, because they do. Because we do need closed questions when we need to force a choice. Do you want the red one or the blue one? You're going to do this Monday or Tuesday. Is this a yes or a no? Yes, we need closed questions. No, we don't need them when we're trying to promote discovery. All right, our second one. A favorite of mine. And when I'm working with people new to coaching, this one slips in all the time. You know you've learned about asking open questions, but you got this really great idea. So you combine your question with your suggestion or your solution. So I've called these qu'ggestions. And you know you're on your way to a qu'gestion when you start off with something like, could you, blah, 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 would you, blah, blah, blah. You know, have you thought of my wonderful idea for you, right? Okay. So typically what follows a could you, would you, should you, do you, will you, can you? What follows one of those? Yes or no. So in another way, we're introducing yet another closed question. And here we're wanting to create a conversation so we can promote discovery of new ideas. What also is behind those 3 dots of the could you, would you, should you, do you, can you, will you, have yous?
Your agenda.
Absolutely, your agenda. It shows up every time. So you could almost call these leading the witness type questions as well, too. So another tip for you, and you're going to start to see a pattern here. When you catch yourself doing a could you, would you, should you, can you, once again, flip it with a what can you do, how can you do that, and be curious. If you've got an idea, a suggestion, don't bury it in a question. Be clean. Just simply put it out there. Okay, we've looked at closed questions that don't promote discovery, qu'ggestions. What else have we got here? The famous why. Now, what is it about a why question? Because, hey, I'm sure you all wanted to say to me, well, Cheryl, why don't you want to go to your mother-in-law's on Sunday night? Didn't you? I see all the heads nodding, right? Okay. So what does a why question typically do for folks when we ask it?
Puts you on the defensive. Yeah.
Absolutely, Jen. Puts us on the defensive. And so now, rather than promoting discovery, I typically am going to start my response with because. So now I'm telling my story and defending my position. Now, I don't want you to hear that whys don't belong. They do a little bit. It's a little bit like seasoning. It's not the whole meal, right? You're not going to get new ideas, original thinking, typically with a why-type question. Once again, flip it around. A what or a how. They are our friends. Okay, our fourth one. Oh, the sin of rambling. Have you ever been to a restaurant and you're hungry and you're motivated, and our bright and breezy, enthusiastic server comes up and says, hello, my name's Cheryl. I'm going to be your server this evening. Let me tell you about our specials. We have the flambé fish. We've got the rack of lamb. We've got our chicken dish. We have a special vegetarian dish, and we've got a focaccia Italian sandwich, and we've got a great soup. Now, what do we typically say after we've heard these 5 specials of the evening? Would you repeat those? And we are motivated because we're hungry and we still can't remember all that information, right? So rambling, folks, is one of the biggest sins in our questions. And what I'm about to show you right now, I wrote down when I heard somebody. It went something like this. This was a senior director who really wanted to be a coach. Honest, Shirley, I am going to get this down. And this is the question I heard. Let me see if I can recreate it as I heard it. When you're working with your team, how can you get your ideas out and then get them really excited about working on their own and even giving them training and tips to use so they don't go all over the place and ramble? Just tell them you only want the bottom line, not all that thinking that went behind it. Just the top 3 suggestions is all you really want, isn't it? If you say so. Right? Yes, questions. My best tip for you ramblers, pause. Think with your mouth closed, not your mouth open, right? Pause, and then let's just kind of net it out. What exactly you're trying to ask here, it's kind of buried in that last sentence there, right? How can you best tell your team what you need? If you're a rambler, my best tip for you, if you want to promote discovery with your team, raise your level of awareness, catch your breath, and zipper up. Think about what you're going to say. Then put it out there. Remember those servers in the restaurant, and remember how motivated you are, and you still get lost in all of the words. My 5th and last tip for you comes in 2 parts, and that's all about interruption. I want to talk to you about too little interruption and too much interruption. Now, when we talk about too little interruption, let me ask you, when somebody is going off in thousands of different directions, what do you notice happens to you? So you find you tune out. Okay, yeah, something else is more important because they're all over the place. Anybody else? What do you? Can't even keep up with them as well, too. So many of the new coaches I work with are often really surprised to learn that it's actually okay to interrupt. It's not the what, it's the how you do it. So some simple ways to say, I'm just going to interrupt you there. You mentioned something earlier I'd like to come back to and recreate the focus. Or, there's lots of information that you're sharing here. Is it okay with you if I interrupt from time to time so that I make sure I sort it? So I feel it's really easy to hear if your intention is clear, because now we've lost the benefit of the person's ideas if I've tuned out. The other side of this is too much interrupting, and you know who you are, folks. The ones that finish people's sentences, that get so excited about the ideas that are starting that you're not even giving a person a chance to even finish their sentence. When you meet somebody that interrupts you all the time, what do you notice you do? You don't talk to them, or you find yourself stepping back. You know, you might as well have at it. You know what you want. And you lose your train of thought as well, too, so it all becomes very frustrating. And remember, we're talking about questions that promote discovery. We want to pull the wisdom out of our team. We want to get the best. So, tips. Be curious about why somebody has that idea. You already know what you know yourself. Use more what and how, a little bit of when, where, and who. Avoid your closed questions. Avoid your qu'ggestions, your why questions, your rambling. And the best part of it all, it is actually okay to interrupt. Good.